So our next presenter here, this is the only presenter here that is a veteran this year. And last year was his first year speaking. He opened us up exceptionally well last year. Travis Mash is a gentleman I've followed for years. I used to watch old videos of you snatching with chains with when you were with Louie. But you got a guy that's broken over 10 world records in powerlifting, in Olympic lifting, little hiatus, coming back and rewriting how we're looking at Olympic weightlifting. And you could write a lot of stuff and talk about a lot of stuff, but when you have athletes that are freakishly strong in your stable, it's not luck. And I always like to look behind the curtain. Thank you guys for coming out and being with us. And thank you, Travis. I already know it's going to be awesome. Travis Mash.
Thank you. All right. All right, well, the cool thing is since I have my athletes here, I can't go wrong, because you're probably not going to look at me, you're just going to watch them and all, like I do every day. So it should be good, regardless of how good I am. So I want to say the speaker before me, Rusty Witt, amazing, and no matter what I say today, is nothing like him. Let's give him a round of applause. It's guys like him that I refuse to call these, we're not going to war, we're not going to battle, because those are the dudes really doing that. What we're doing today is showing you how to make great athletes, and we're going to talk about the difference in the weightlifting movements and the powerlifting movements. You guys feel free to push me out of the way. They're going to be doing cleans, and we're going to be doing squats and maybe some pulls. I want you to see the contrast between Olympic weightlifting and the powerlifting movements. But more importantly, I want you to see how you can plug and play them into your own programs, and more importantly, why you should or shouldn't. So we'll find out. Yeah, you guys keep rolling. And so who's this for? Coaches, parents, athletes, and the silly person still talking about growth plates. Like, yeah, that's not a thing for weightlifting. I think we all know that in this room. Who I am, I think after hearing Rusty, I'm not going to really talk about any of that because it's not near as cool as what he's done in life. But at least you'll know, the thing I want you to know is that I understand powerlifting. I was a world champion. I understand weightlifting. I've coached world champions. And athletic performance is more of my passion than any of the two. So, I'm hoping that the whole point of me going back to school, I just graduated with my master's in exercise science with a 4.0 at 50 years old. The whole point was that I could bring it all together. Is that I feel like in our industry, we have the really strong athletes that some people will look to. We have the really good coaches that everybody looks to. We have the PhDs like the Andy Galpins in the world. But we don't have someone who can bring it together. So the whole point of me going back to school was I could do that for you guys. Fundamental differences between the 6 main movements is what we're going to talk about today: the snatch, clean, jerk, squat, bench, deadlift. We're going to talk about ways to alter each: velocity, range of motion, external resistance. We're going to learn how to emphasize contraction and then strength endurance continuum with reps, sets, and rest. So here are some of the highlights that you guys already know, I bet. Because you guys have been to the NSCA, CSCS. How many people have taken their USA weightlifting level 1? Raise your hand. So a lot of this you guys have already been privy to. But for snatch, clean, and jerks, this is from Garhammer years ago, where he talked about 2,950 watts for the snatch and clean. That was in the 100 kilogram. What he did, he was able to compare 100 kilogram weightlifters to 100 kilogram powerlifters. And he found that when they were maxing out in competition, that the weightlifting movements were able to produce way more power. But that's the key, is he was watching them max out. And so, but just because what they were doing in competition doesn't mean that has anything to do with anything that you all are doing. So that's the point I want to make today. So jerk has similar outputs. The second pull of the snatch and the clean are around 5,500 watts, which is awesome. But, we've also got the force that's being absorbed in the torso, hips, knees, and ankles. Some things to think about: power clean and snatches maximize eccentric contraction elements when you catch it. The hang variations are specific to counter movement jumps, and the clean and snatches from blocks mimic the static start. So The cool thing is you're able to mimic joint angles that you'll see during sprints, jumps, with the Olympic lifts, depending on blocks or from the hang. Power lifts, same study, Garhammer found that the maximum power for a heavy snatch a heavy squat or deadlift was around 1,100 watts. Yet, by using less weight, we can equal the power. And I'll show you in a minute. We commonly meet or exceed those wattages that you're seeing with just using squats hold on. I just want to make sure you guys understand today that I'm not trying to say that there's one better than the other. The goal I'm trying to get you to see is that it depends on how you use it. It never depends on the type of movement. Go ahead, Sarah. Yeah. Oh, okay. So it never depends on the movement. It depends on how you do the movement. So that's the key, that right there. So, that's 250 pounds you saw a girl do, which is crazy. Now, by using less weights, you can equal the power, and by adding bands, you can probably beat the amount of wattage that you exhibit when you're doing a squat, if you use bands. Thoughts, at a trap bar, and power probably increases more than any of that because it's maximizing your joint angles. If you know about moment arms, you know that you just optimized all your moment arms at your knee, ankle, and hips, and even all the intervertebral joints at the back the minute you bring the bar closer to the middle of the body, the center of mass. So here's Ruby.
Come on, let's go.
Come on, Ruby.
Get up, come on!
Well, let me tell you the cool thing about that is last year, she could clean 85 kilograms, which is 187 pounds. 1 year later, she's trying to 250 pounds clean up here. So, yeah, she bad, as she said. But the things you're gonna learn today is how we did it. We were able to see where she produces force, at what joint angle, and where she doesn't produce it efficiently, and we flip-flop that. So, using velocity allows you to maximize the parameter of his or her choice by using rate of force development, power, and force. I will say the powerlifting movements are much easier to be specific with certain parameters. Like if I need to really work on eccentric, portion of the lifts, then I can emphasize it with the power lifts, whether it's deadlift or whether it's the squat. It's not going. There we go. So here's an example. So demonstrating power is optimized with jumps and front squats with bands. So here you have Matt Weininger, is a young man sitting right here who has a 41-inch vertical leap. And then Ryan doing front squats with bands. And as you can see, if I can see it, both of them were able to produce more power than what Garhammer talked about in his research about the dudes who were maxing out at 100 kilos. So don't get caught up in that. Just because he saw a certain wattage during a competition doesn't mean that you guys are going to, by doing that, optimize power. And that's another point I want to make is just because I'm exhibiting power when I train doesn't mean I'm doing anything to increase that power. As you're going to find in a little bit, it's about finding out where you are on that force velocity curve, which we'll talk about. So, advantages of teaching weightlifting movements. It ticks a lot of boxes. This is true. Rate of force development will be maximized by nature. Let me get how much is this now?
265.
Here's a 265 clean she's about to do.
I did the math right. Come on, Sarah.
Let's go, Sarah.
Come on, Sarah.
I have the coolest job maybe in the world, I'm pretty sure. Come on, Sarah.
Let's go.
Go. Come on. Yeah. Come on, Sarah. Here we go.
Like I said, it doesn't matter what I say today. It's going to look good no matter what. So, impulse. By understanding the difference between impulse and momentum, that the way that they go together. Impulse is force times the amount of time you apply force. Momentum is mass times velocity. And so like when I'm able to spend more time driving with my legs, the more velocity I will create. That's that relationship between impulse and momentum. It happens by nature in weightlifting. I don't have to say a word, because by nature they know I need to pull this as hard and as long as I can to produce the height I need to get to the lift. So that's one thing you don't have to worry about. Force absorption, when they catch this big lift, there's force being absorbed. And for football players, like, all right, Ruby. Yeah. Force absorption happens by nature. Accentuated eccentrics, when you do the power movements, power clean, power snatch, will automatically happen. So that, we're in this era where, it's not an era, I think we've been talking about eccentrics for the last 50 years. It's just now coming back to where we're talking about it more and more. And so my dude, Dr., I don't know, raise your hand if you know Dr. Tim Suckamel. Anyone? You should. So you should probably write that down, because he's very good, and he's releasing a lot of new research that's going to show you the importance of eccentrics and how to maximize them. He's doing something that none of y'all have read yet, because it hasn't happened. We know eccentrics are important, but we don't know the loading parameters, but you're about to know, thanks to him. So Tim Suckamel. Also, by nature, we limit antagonists. Where are we at now? 365? Yeah, that's hard. So by doing weightlifting, you automatically, So, I know, I get caught up too, just like you guys. So like, I get to do this every day. I've watched that boy grow from being, he came to me and said, hey, will you teach me how to do CrossFit? And like, teach me how to be strong for CrossFit? And I assessed him, and I'm like, yeah, I'll teach you for CrossFit. Whatever you need me to say. So let's go now. Here's the 315 front squat. Let's go. The point of me having them do this contrast, where you're seeing a clean and you're seeing a squat, is you see visually what I'm talking about. Is that like the adaptations you'll get from maxing at the clean or the squat are totally different. Inevitably, force production will be maximized when you do a squat or a pull. Inevitably, power will be maximized when you do a clean. It just doesn't mean that you have to do one or the other to improve power. That's all I'm saying. All right, so mobility, you're obviously gonna get good mobility. You're gonna get type 2 hypertrophy from doing weightlifting and power. And so, however, it probably doesn't maximize any of those weightlifting. So like the thing that you can do with the powerlifting movements is you can choose a parameter and focus on that one parameter and maximize it. In weightlifting, it's what it is, Come on, Sarah. What are we at now? 275, let's go. 125 kilograms. Come on, Sarah, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. But a point I want to make before we go further, unless you can lift the way she lifts, all these numbers I'm telling you don't matter, because you won't create the same amount of power or force, or you won't get the impulse because you're getting behind the bar too soon. So that would be a key. The thing I'm going to say today, as a weightlifting coach that's not a purist, that's the difference in me and a lot of others. Like, I love strength conditioning more than I love either, right? And so unless you can do it a certain way, everything I'm telling you is not happening. So don't go back and say, just because you're doing a clean in your gym, that you're producing 5,500 watts of power, because probably you're not, unless you can teach it well, Advantages of teaching the powerlifting movements. Maximize focus of, notice what I say there, I can maximize the focus of. So I can look at rate of force development, because I'm looking at peak force divided by time to peak force. All right, Ruby, let's smoke this.
Come on, Ren.
Let's go. All right, good job. I can also emphasize eccentrics with powers because it's slowed down. I can spend more time on a one parameter. With weightlifting, you can't. It's just all or nothing. You know, it's kind of like the motor units, all or nothing. So if there's any exercise science geeks in the house, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But maybe I'm the only one. And so force absorption with squat jumps, especially the trap bar jump, which you're going to find out later. You probably, if all you're trying to do in your gym is create maximum power, you should probably look at the trap bar jump, even more than the squat jump, even more than the clean, even more than the vertical leap, probably. So joint angles, I can be specific. Like if I'm a sprint coach, I can be specific to the joint angles. So that's important. Meaning, like as sprinters, I can do, like sometimes we'll all bitch about like, squatting high, squatting low. You should never do this. And this is 405, by the way. He weighs 160. So, and if you have someone in your gym who can do this, send them to me. I can limit the antagonist. What I mean by antagonist and agonist is like when I squat, when I'm standing up, there's times where my quads are they're the agonist trying to help me do what I'm doing. The hamstrings are the opposite. They're trying to fight against what I'm doing. And so if I can eliminate the co-activation of the antagonist and agonist, then I'm better off, antagonist and agonist. Yeah, so because when I'm sprinting, because you guys are all mainly, who here is a strength and conditioning coach at a university or high school? Raise your hand. Perfect. Your goal is to get these dudes faster. And to get fast, one of the things is making sure I minimize co-activation. Because if I'm sprinting, if my hamstrings and my quads are working at the same time, you're slow. And so that's what you can be careful of. But by looking at velocity and looking at, using bands, for example, changes everything. It changes the squat. You will eliminate, like if Ryan were to do a front squat for you, you would see a very different looking front squat than you're used to. It would be super fast. So, because we can use bands and velocity. Hypertrophy, the good thing about the powerlifts too, if my goal is to get jacked, then probably squatting, pulling, and benching and pressing, rowing, those things are going to maximize your ability to add muscle. Because there's an eccentric, there's a concentric, even sometimes an isometric component. So, all right, let me get out
Let's go,
Sarah.
Sarah. Come on, y'all, let's hear it.
Let's go. What is this, P85? Yeah, this is the PR. Come on, Sarah. Let's go. Use your legs. Come on. Under it. Yeah. Bert, where's Bert? I feel like I should mic drop now and just leave. Yeah. But we'll finish a little. I know, I told him it was a BR. Yeah, it's really cool. So, now, questions to ponder, strength coaches. I want you to think about what I'm about to ask you here. Is demonstrating maximum power in training important for improving one's ability to exhibit power on the field? Maybe, maybe not, which I'm going to give you some answers in a minute. Is max power and force important without a look at time to max power and force? If my peak power increases and my ability to produce peak force goes up, but the time also, it takes me longer to get to that. And if you're a football player, if you're a sprinter, if you're a softball player, none of those adaptations were any good for you. So if you got to keep that time to those peaks to either be the same or better. So something to think about. I focus on increasing loads at a particular velocity. Like Ryan will not do a 1RM front squat if I can keep him from it. But like my goal is for him to do no more 1RMs. I mean, he back squats 600 pounds, weighing 160. Like he already has all the strength we need to get him to where he needs. But if I can increase his 1RM at 0.5 meters per second, if that trends up, that is more applicable to weightlifting than him getting, a 700-pound squat at 0.15 meters per second. None of that's worth anything in our sport. It's awesome in powerlifting. And it's probably not that good for football coaches and athletes either. Because if you can move at 0.15 meters per second, as cool as that is those adaptations to be able to do that are not worth a darn for speed. We probably know about, some of you nerds like me know about pennation angle. Like, yes, let's go. Come on. This is 200 kilos, 440. Come on, boy. Ah. Oh, yeah. Oh. You gotta get that one more shot. One more shot. All right. Yeah, it's 450? Yeah, it is. That's a big jump. That's way more than the world record is weight class. Way more. The good thing about coaching people who aren't that...
That's 2.81 times body weight.
Yeah, 2.81 times body weight on his clean. So that's why when y'all talk about the 1.7 back squats, I'm like, all right. You don't want to run into him then, but do what you want. So is max power and force important without a look at time? No. I focus on increasing loads at particular velocities. I already said the 0.15 is probably no good. Is it important for a power lifter to track his or her 1RM at 0.5? Probably not. It doesn't matter. All they need is maximum force production at any velocity. Something to think about right here now is like, here's the one point I like to make, and this is one takeaway you can emphasize, is if instead of worrying about a certain maximum, it is probably better to think about my sport and think about a velocity that's important to that sport and maximizing the amount of force you can do at that velocity and at that time to velocity. That is more important. So you will, to someone like me, if you start talking more about rate of force development and more about how much force one can produce at a certain velocity, that lets me know that you're very smart. And that lets me know that you're going to do really well with your athletes. If all you think about is power, you're like eliminating a lot of good things that you could be doing for your athletes. Because just because they exhibit the most power at a certain percentage does not mean that what you're doing is increasing their ability to produce power on the field at the velocity they're required to produce it. Understanding where an athlete falls on the force velocity curve will allow for a program specificity. Here's what I'm suggesting. Surfing the force velocity curve. Now I know, let me be clear. I realize a lot of you are coaching hundreds of people and like 30, 40 or more people per session. I get it. So for you to individually program like I do is not feasible. And plus I understand you have limited time. I get that. But what you could do is this, is you could group people into fast but weak, so they need strength focus, and they need to spend some time lower velocities. Slow and strong, they need to focus on high velocity cleans and jumps, or they're in the middle, say like Orion, who's like, he's like that power perfect guy, and so you want to spend time at all. That's when West Side Barbell would be a great focus. The one thing I think, and Louis is a mentor. Anyone who knows me knows I love him. The one thing he missed is this, is when he said that everybody should do dynamic, everybody should do max effort days, is like grouping people into this, like, into a group that doesn't and shouldn't exist. I was already, because I'd been a football player and because I'd been a weightlifter, that's why I knew dynamic day wasn't doing anything. So I would just lie to him and be like, I did it, but I just kept working up. And so like, because I needed more force, I needed to be able to grind at 0.15. because I couldn't. I was more like these guys where at 0.4, I was starting to get iffy. But, so for me to spend time in dynamic was a waste of time. And so like who should do it and who shouldn't? Well, I'm about to tell you. So, yeah. Here are 2 easy tests that you can take away. And by anyone who wants to email me, you can email me at travis@jimaware.com, and I will send you these tools. And you could do a force velocity profile, and you could do a reactive strength index. And with these 2 things, I could individualize in a way. And like Jeff, my man here was already telling me at Louisville, hats off to you guys, they're already doing what I'm talking about, so I'm behind the curve. So thanks to guys like Pat Ivy, come on, Ryan.
Come on, come on. Come on.
All right, I'm happy now, so it's good. So, but being able to do force velocity curve, you will see at where I need to focus. So if you get reds like you see there, that guy needs to focus on starting strength, which is like super fast stuff, and he needs to do strength speed. Sorry. So because he failed at both of those 2 parameters. But even if you don't know strength, speed, strength, accelerated strength, you'll just see I need to be somewhere, I need to spend quality time around 0.73, 0.83, even 1.54. It's that simple. The reactive strength index, as you can see, like you notice the best RSI score in that group is this guy, who happens to be one of the best weightlifters ever in America. Nice, right? And so, but he's, because he's good at all, force and velocity, which makes him powerful, right? So if he was, if on that RSI score, if his ground contact time is, say, 0.5, and his height was 34, I need to focus on what? Elasticity, high velocity. And so, okay, here's a good example. Riley, who's lifting with you right now, see how he has a 30-plus vertical, but he's a 0.5 ground contact time. So what did we do? We spent time doing a lot of eccentrics, a lot of the flywheel movements. Great, I love the flywheel, by the way. Yeah. You're too much of a boss. So, but by doing those movements, you'll get a lot of the information you need to individualize in a way that you can do in a big group setting. That's what I'm trying to get to. Some final thoughts for you guys to ponder is this. He's in a study, there was college weightlifters jumped on average 25.6 inches, which is bad, I know, but that's not my study. Those dudes wouldn't do that. But they produced about 6,931 watts of power jumping. Our athletes showed even higher values with drop jumps somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000. And if you flip back to that original screen, you would see one inching towards 20,000 watts from RSI, a drop jump, which was, where's Matt? That young man right there has probably got the best vertical leap on our team. And let me say this, before you say, well, they're powerlifters or they're weightlifters, so what could they do? He transitioned to track and field at Lenoir-Rhyne University, a D2 school, and right away, he had been running since middle school, you guys. He stopped doing football, track, and all that as a freshman. So he hadn't done it in he was 23 when he started back, and was able to walk right on and do really well and get below 11-second 100. So I think that's shows you what just training with these parameters in mind will do for you. Now, if we can get him better at sprinting, get him down to 10.2s or more. That's the goal. Trap bar jumps. You might consider, if what you're trying to do is to maximize power, trap bar jumps is probably going to be your thing to do. And I don't know if it's up there, but evidently 30% of your 1RM is like the sweet spot to maximize power. But once again, you may or may not need to. Bands and velocity and power production on most lifts. So what we do, and this could flow right into football. when we're 6 weeks out, which Ryan is we're less than that now. We got Cuba in just like 3 weeks. And so now it's bands only on the squats. Because why? Because bands will emphasize the speed of the eccentric and will emphasize overall a higher velocity, which equals higher power. So, and that's all that matters at this point in our training. I am pretty confident, based on the latest research, that if you're trying to peak for your season, I'm not sure that you should ever not use bands on squats. Just because by nature, they make you move faster with any similar load as to non-bands. So, but do what you want. So, I want you to think about this too. If you're very strong, like me or like Jeff, yes. How much is that? Isn't that PR? That's a PR? Yes. Yeah. I mean, that was a 365 front squat by a guy who's at 67 kilograms, which is like 148 pounds, right? So it's pretty impressive. And this dude, when he came to me, I'm going to be honest with him in front of everyone. I probably gave him a sympathy scholarship because I liked him so much. And I will stand here and I'm stand corrected. That dude has exceeded expectations of me more than any other person I've ever coached. So give Riley a hand right there. Yeah, he's more than earned his scholarship from me in weightlifting. He's killed it. Made Team USA. I never would have guessed. I thought he'd be pretty good, but he's more than pretty good. So get strong if you're weak. If you're weak and fast, get strong. You'll be more powerful. Get fast if you're strong and slow. It just makes sense, right? Elasticity can be improved with eccentrics, bounding. We all know that. If you don't know Dr. Cook, I'm sorry, not Dr. Cook, Dr. Keith Barr, you should. Come on, Sarah. Hips. How much is this? A lot? All right. Sweet. So jumping and sprinting is going to improve high velocity force production above most anything. So if you want to get faster and you want to jump higher, you will need to do that. You'll need to do the things you want to get good at. How much? 335. All right. And so to jump higher and sprint faster, you have to jump and sprint. Teach the things you're good at. Here's what I mean by that. The point of this whole talk today is this. If you're not proficient at teaching Olympic weightlifting, then don't teach it. And I will not judge you. I will judge you more if you try to teach it and you shouldn't be. Let's go, Ruby. Hips, go, finish. Yes. So, but because I think I've showed you today, you don't have to do snatch. You don't have to do clean. Especially if you're not good at teaching it, don't do it. Then do the trap bar jumps, man. There's going to be a lot of force absorption if you do a trap bar jump and don't let go when you land. Boom, you got your force absorption. But I will say this, if you can, it ticks a lot of boxes, especially when you guys are limited in the amount of time that they can coach the athletes. So it does tick a lot of boxes, but you don't have to. And if you're going to teach it poorly, all you're doing is putting an athlete at risk. Don't teach the movements you're not good at until you can become proficient. So so that's another thing too. I'm not telling you that it's okay that you can't teach those movements, but teach the ones you can teach and then go learn the ones you need to. A true understanding of which stimuli produces a particular adaptation is imperative. So I'm going to give you a couple. Here's a couple of notes for you. If you want to increase rate coding, that's the speed that the brain is sending through the alpha motor neuron to any particular muscle, or the muscles that motor neuron innervates. If you want to get better at that, which is super important for speed and jumping, then consider concentric only training, consider doing bands. All those things will get better. If you want to improve elasticity and connective tissue, which will without a doubt make you faster, then do bounding, do the accentuated eccentrics, do the isometric, do the flywheel. The flywheel, if you do it correctly, is a miracle. For us, it has been. I'll say this with the flywheel only. We did, those two guys right there both had mid-30 verticals. They did the flywheel for 6 weeks. Done correctly, both of them jumped over 40 in 6 weeks. Nothing changed. Nothing else changed. Let's go. Come on, Harley. If you want to get better at rate of force development, using high velocity movements will help. Throwing implements will help. And then the Olympic lifts will help too. Joint angle specifics, I would recommend, I will say this, before anyone, here's why you guys should never get on Twitter and use absolutes, is to get on there and say that you should always squat below parallel shows me ignorance. Because there are times, look, I love squatting deep, as you can see. However, there are times where I'm trying to maximize a particular joint angle. And for me not to use and to know that adaptations are specific to the joint angle you're working at, I am limiting my athletes on what I could be doing for them. So don't use absolutes. The only absolute in the world that exists is that there are none. So no one's gonna listen to that, but you should. The ways to individualize things at a big group setting, which, my man, you crushed it when talking to you. So power-driven, football, baseball, sprinters, throwers. You gotta know the sports you're working with, muscular endurance, soccer, basketball, wrestling. You gotta know aerobic, if that's important, so cross country. Then individualization based on the force velocity curve. Come on, Sarah. Fast and weak. Are you fast and weak, strong and slow, or are you perfectly powerful? And then further considerations, elasticity, rotational athletes, and regressions, how to regress all that. Come on, Sarah. That was easier. Okay. I think it's a lot, but so velocity parameters to consider. Using a subjective questionnaire along with counter movement jumps is probably really good for daily readiness. Elasticity improvements with RSI, rate of force development, eccentric force absorption, force velocity spectrum. Shout out to GymAware. To be very open, they pay me. So, I know that there's competitors here, but I will say this. I wanted to do research, and they're the gold standard. So there was nothing else that made sense to me other than them, so I'll say that. Velocity zones, you'll see with the back end, we're able to see concentric peak force, time to that peak force, which is rate of force development, one divided by the other. So now we're able to actually give you the rate of force development without you doing the math. You can just look and see, are you getting better or are you getting worse, which is super important. The force velocity spectrum, yeah. Here's my contact. This is my son lifting. Matt is rocks. He just competed for the first time. He's an 8-year-old and did really. He really went. He didn't have any misses except he cleaned his opening snatch. That was his only miss.
Come on. Hold.
All right. Yes. Yeah. So you can go if you want to know about stimuli to adaptations. I've just done a huge, a huge release from GymAware where I've gone over all of them. Range of motion, the velocity of the contraction, eccentrics, isometrics. You'll learn all you want to know about any kind of stimuli. And then mashlead.com, you can get all the rest. And if you want to buy GymAware, Mash5. So it's a selfish plug. And now I will say this. Do we have even time for questions? Oh yeah, I'm ahead of schedule. This is awesome. So I'll open it up while these dudes finish to any questions. Yes? Right. I would personally, that's a great question. So he's asking, he teaches volleyball players, he wants to maximize their mobility. I would say it's better to teach the full movements first. Some people will say do powers. But what happens if you do power snatches, power cleans early, and then you flip and say, now I want you to do a full range of motion, it's harder than if you teach the full first and then say do power, because you get comfortable doing the powers. This is easy, I'm comfortable here, and then you say do the full. It's a process then to transition. And the full movements are going to be better for, time well spent on the full range of motion is important because you're talking about the moment of inertia. So when someone sprints, if their if their heel can be right by their butt when their leg is recovering, it's faster. That's just physics. Newton was a smart dude. So like if they can't get into that position where the heel is right by the butt to recover their leg, they're going to be slower. So it's important to spend quality time doing a full range of motion to maximize speed on, like on the sprinting. So, and it's an easier way to get mobility than stretching out and on. Just, Andy Galpin said it best. If you want to maximize mobility, never lose that mobility. Best way to do it. Somebody, yeah. Great question. So it was easier just to do, because we did it 3 days a week, every week. We just chose 40 centimeters. It's kind of like, the absolute, and that way we can see the improvement at a steady parameter, So that's what we did, and we did a t-test to see like where each athlete stood amongst each other. It was just a very simpler way versus looking at Bosco's. It's so elaborate. It's like, who's got time for that, So we used GymAware because it was, for us, number one, force plate, you got to spend another several thousand, and then it was easier to standardize with GymAware than it was with the jump mat. The jump mats, these dudes are great athletes. So if there's a way to cheat it, they're going to cheat it. And with GymAware, it just eliminates that. Once you get, here's the height standing, then that's where it's going to measure off of. And I can standardize that. Much easier to measure. And it's automatically goes to the cloud. I don't have to write a bunch of stuff down. So, yeah.
So you talked about how it probably makes more sense in some sports to just have a 1RM at a specific velocity.
Yes.
Would you say that all those sports are, just different across the whole spectrum of athletics though?
Yeah, I would say the faster sport, like sprinting, that should be higher, but for football, I think 0.5 is a beautiful number. Doesn't mean you shouldn't spend some time below that, getting near 0.4. But the thing is that when you start going 0.4 and lower, not much adaptation is happening. It's just a demonstration of how strong you are. And so all you're doing is putting the athlete at risk. And so why? That's the same reason why we don't want, he's in a year we'll be in Paris, I hope, God willing. And so the last thing I want to do is get hurt squatting because squatting is not our sport. So just like football playing or softball or any other, it's not your sport, squatting. So why? And it's, if his 1RM increases at 0.4, 0.5, so will his 1RM all over. It just means I need to spend a little time, below that to get him ready to do his max. But why? Because the adaptations you have to get to go to that 0.15 meters per second, like a world-class powerlifter, are not good at all for sprinting. Otherwise, guys like me and Ed Cohen would be the fastest people on earth. And we're nowhere near, So
a sport like football that does require a great deal of force,
yeah.
like man-on-man, and sprinting ability,
Right.
You kind of or would you in that situation okay, maybe it's valuable to have 1RM at this velocity?
Yeah, because you could definitely do this. A lineman, maybe you drop it to 0.4, but still not much lower. Because we've all known those linemen who could squat a ton. But they were so slow to get out of their stance, it was just get out of my way, So, but if a lineman is hitting 600 pounds at 0.4 meters per second, that dude's, he's deadly. I would rather have him than a 700 at 0.15 all day long.
Bill Gillespie used to, this was 15 years ago at least, he was maxed out his football team at 0.6 meters per second. Was their max though?
Even better. If you're going to do it as on a big spectrum, I think 0.6 would be brilliant. But if you want to break it into linemen, say running backs and linebackers, and then your skill people, you maybe go 0.4, 0.5, 0.6. And I would stand behind that solid that if those numbers went up at those velocities, those dudes got better at producing force at the rate at which you want them to do it. That's the key. So. All the above, man. Remember I said no absolutes? That's a brilliant question. So he said with trap bar jumps, is it always from the floor? I believe that the research was based on that. But by now I think we all know there's other adaptations. When you do a counter movement, you get stretch shortening cycle, probably get more elasticity adaptations. Or if you do it from the floor, the first rep, and then just bound, you get the same. But I would say spend time in all of those. Hang. If you're gonna do it from the hang, that's going to mimic what? Like a vertical jump. If I'm going to do it from the floor, or maybe even from blocks, which is a little higher, that's going to mimic the start in a sprint, especially if you're a wide receiver. Even the higher, the better. You know, so like today, Ryan did 200 kilos from the hip. That would be great for like a receiver.
We lived on those in Highland Games.
Yeah, Highland Games, yes. Because you don't need to bend that far. You want to be specific. All you got to do, man, is watch your guys play and see what's needed and see like, okay, who's doing it really well? What do they do? What are their angles? And mimic that. So you can take all the sciencey stuff I said, throw it away and do what I just told you. You know? So, any other questions? Oh, okay. Go ahead. I'll do this all day.
For accommodating resistance,
Yes.
do you strictly stick bands or for slower velocities or use chains?
Yes, so it's a different adaptation. So like, even when you use chains, it's still gonna be, at any particular percentage of your 1RM, it's still gonna move faster, but it's not gonna move as fast as bands because you won't get the speed of the eccentrics increased. So like, in the thing I would do with, let's say that, you know, say for a powerlifter, it's good to do chains versus bands because it's more specific, you know? Football players, you might not want to do the bands because towards the end of the season, they're getting beat up, you know? And so like Coach Ken used to use a lot, like for the Carolina Panthers forever, he would keep the bar weight the same and he would just increase their chains. And so like when they were going into playoff time, they were peaking in their strength, but he kept it at a particular velocity too. So they're just more specific, you know, they're moving. The thing about bands also too, it's easier to accelerate all the way through. I should have talked about this, but like, great question. So like compensatory acceleration, we've all heard that. Dr. Fred Hatfield coined that term, made it super popular. Louis Simmons told us all about it. But does anybody really do it? Like if you don't have bands, inevitably, when you finish at the top, you're going to slow down because you don't want the bar to pop. If I have bands, I can accelerate all the way through and I don't have to worry about that. There's even more, and I'm not trying to say everyone's West Side or this is my way of saying Louis Simmons was better than everyone else. I'm saying he got that one right. And we should probably listen to that. Or don't, and I'll keep winning. I like it. Any other questions? Yeah, I mean, a lot of people who just refuse to like grow makes it very easy for me to win, which is awesome. I'll take it. I'm a power lifter turned weightlifting coach beating everybody. There's a problem. Maybe you guys should think about other avenues, or not. So. Yes. That one? Oh. Yeah, you're welcome. That's my dude, Cade Carney, that Coach Horgan. He was met him when he was at Wake Forest being a head strength coach. We shared him as an athlete. I see him. He went on to start 4 years at Wake Forest. And if there's any Duke fans, that dude had y'all's number, that guy. First year, 3 touchdowns in his freshman year against Duke. So, and now he's got a brother that's coming. I feel bad for Duke, man. You might just avoid them. So, any other questions? Thanks for pointing him out.
Let's wrap up here, guys, so we can roll to lunch, if that's cool.
All right, last question.
Thank you.
Like in a team setting, instead of like prescribing percentage and velocity comparing it together, is it okay to just ride velocity?
Yes. Yes, I mean, I like to do them both, so these guys will start to understand intent. As you notice, even without me watching them, they flow very well. They understand my intent. So it'd be fine if you got like 40 athletes, just say, hey, work up to 5 reps at 0.5 for 5 sets. It's so much simpler. All right, guys, thank you so much for having me.